5 Scary and Strange Aviation Mysteries. Today, flying has become a normal way for people to travel and allows us to move anywhere in the world in a matter of hours. But like anything, with that convenience, there also comes risk. The cases on this list deal with some of the most tragic and odd flights that have ever happened. These are 5 Scary and Strange Aviation Mysteries. Number 5. Flight MH370. Malaysian Airlines Flight MH370 left Kuala Lumpur, headed to Beijing on March 8, 2014. There were 239 people on board and everything looked clear and promising at the start. The flight left as scheduled, but 40 minutes into its route, it disappeared from civilian radar and only became trackable using military radar. The flight began heading northeast towards Beijing, but slowly turned and started traveling to the southwest. It made another turn and headed northwest towards India. Afterwards, it disappeared completely, and no one knows what happened. Days after, the Malaysian Prime Minister confirmed that the plane diverted from its planned course. The zigzag route it took was unusual, and it's believed that something happened on board that triggered the craft to do so. Whatever incident it was, the plane continued to fly up to 4 to 7 hours after it had stopped sending signals. For many, speculation ran high that the plane had been hijacked by terrorists, and reports of 2 men boarding the flight using fake passports became a major concern. There was an initial theory the flight was hijacked and had landed somewhere in Central Asia, but in 2015 that theory was debunked when debris was found on Reunion Island off the Indian Ocean. Eventually, it was confirmed the debris came from the Boeing wing segment of Flight MH370. Many believe, including the Malaysian government, that the flight suffered a mass hypoxia event. Either some kind of fire broke out in the plane, or a severe malfunction happened to cause it to go on an emergency landing procedure. It's possible there was a widespread loss of oxygen, and it knocked the crew and passengers out, causing the plane to go on autopilot until it ran out of fuel and crashed in the Indian Ocean. This is currently the main theory, an official standing for the Malaysian government and the Australian Transport Safety Bureau. But in 2016, officials uncovered pilot Zahari Ahmad Shah's personal flight simulator at home, where he had drafted a route into the southern Indian Ocean, similar to the path that the MH370 took. This caused suspicion for some, stating Zahari might have been suicidal and purposely diverted the plane to kill himself and all those on board. However, officials are not buying this story. On the flip side, another strong theory is Zahari may have been conscious during the flight's demise, and his efforts and actions were chosen as a form of controlled landing. Years onward, and still, there are many lingering questions as to what really happened to Flight MH370. For now, it still remains a mystery. Number 4. UFO sighted by 2 planes. Cruising at 37,000 feet above the New Mexican desert on February 24, 2018, a Learjet pilot radios traffic control and asks, "Was anybody above us that passed us like 30 seconds ago?" Controllers at the Albuquerque Air Traffic Center in New Mexico replied, "Negative." The Learjet pilot responds, "Okay, something did." This mysterious comment prompted the controller to investigate. He noticed another plane was in the same vicinity, an Airbus A321 bound for San Diego. The controller radios the pilot with an unusual request asking, "American 1095, let me know if anything passes over you here in the next 15 miles. For the American Airlines pilot, it was an unusual request. He responds, "If anything passes over us?" as if unsure what to make of the request. The controller explains what had happened and tells them they didn't have any targets, so whatever it was the Learjet pilot saw didn't show up on their radar screens. During this exchange, the Learjet pilot who was listening cuts in and says he wasn't sure what it was and said it wasn't an airplane. He adds the path was going in the opposite direction. It took a minute before the American 1095 radios in and says, "Yeah, something just passed over us, like I don't know what it was, but it was at least 2,000 to 3,000 feet above us." He added, "Yeah, it passed right over the top of us." The flight controller, unsure of what was going on, asked if the object was stationary or moving. The American Airlines pilot couldn't tell but described it as having a big reflection and was thousands of feet above, heading in the other direction. He later added that the object didn't look like a Google balloon either. This exchange and sighting are currently considered one of the best proofs that there was a legitimate UFO in that area. For the FAA, their public affairs manager said the controller was unable to identify if there were any other aircrafts flying in the same airfield as the private and commercial jets that day. But this isn't the first UFO report to occur where multiple pilots saw something strange at one time. One of these also happened on October 25, 2017. The unusual craft was detected on radar flying at an unusual speed at over 37,000 feet right over Northern California. Soon, nearby pilots began reported sightings of the mysterious craft as it headed towards Oregon. Because of the unusual circumstance, F-15 fighters were launched to intercept the craft, but it was too late as it became invisible to radar. While that area of New Mexico does have a few U.S. bases around, it's not certain whether the sightings are that of military or private crafts being tested, or if it's something from out of this world. After all, the same New Mexico area is also home to the Roswell crash and the infamous, allegedly secret alien facility, Dulce Base. Number 3. EgyptAir Flight 990. Just 33 minutes after takeoff, EgyptAir Flight 990, flying from New York to Cairo, disappeared from radar. It was supposed to be a routine nonstop flight. The Boeing 767 was carrying 199 passengers and about 18 crew members when it left Kennedy International Airport on October 31, 1999 at 1:19 a.m. Takeoff was late, but everything looked normal on a clear night until something went wrong and the plane began to plummet fast. Federal officials say in their radar sweeps the aircraft showed to have fallen 33,000 feet to 19,000 feet in a matter of 36 seconds. It was falling like a rock, whereas a normal descent would be around 1,500 to 2,000 feet per minute. Within seconds, the plane had descended into the dark, murky waters off the coast of Massachusetts, close to the island of Nantucket. Usually the area would be littered with fishing boats and lobstermen, but that night, no one was around. As soon as news hit that the flight was missing, the Coast Guard and rescue ships swarmed the area. All they could recover was a few pieces of debris, passports, a wheel, 2 life rafts, clothing, life jackets, and a single body, but nothing else. For a while, the rescuers insisted it was still a rescue mission, but eventually they had to concede that no one had survived the crash. The first thing that came to mind was that it was a terrorist bombing, but no terrorists had stepped forward with any claims of sabotage. The weather was clear that day, so that was ruled out as a possible cause of the crash. Investigators into the doomed craft's fate was spearheaded by the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board. After 2 weeks of conducting the investigation, they declared it was a criminal event and handed it over to the FBI. Egyptian officials were against this and sent over one of their own to help out. According to the safety board, there were indications that the cause of the crash was because of an observed split elevator condition in the cockpit, meaning the captain's position was commanding the plane to go nose up, while the first officer's position was commanding the plane nose down. Various possible mechanical failure scenarios were also tested, but this proved to not match the evidence. Even though they concluded the split elevator condition contributed to the crash, they weren't able to determine what were the reasons for the first officer's actions. For a while, U.S. media outlets touted the crash was a result of revenge. The first officer, Gamil El-Batouti, deliberately turned off the engine and crashed the plane because he was told by EgyptAir that he would no longer be allowed to fly transatlantic routes because of various sexual misconduct allegations. However, the Egyptian government denies this and insists evidence points to some form of mechanical failure on the flight. Others believe in a more unusual explanation. What's curious about Flight 990 is that after going down its initial drop for about 30 seconds, it then climbed back up to an elevation of 24,000 feet. This was strange since by this time, the craft was not operating on any engine at all. In fact, both engines had conked out from the initial descent. Conspiracy theorists point to the FBI adamantly explaining the crash away as a result of the co-pilot's criminal act because they don't want to have to answer why the plane itself seemed to have defied gravity seconds before it plummeted and crashed into the ocean. The families of those who perished have continued to live with questions. Although not all victims were named, it's believed there were 62 Egyptians, 2 Sudanese, 1 Chilean, and 3 Syrians on board. The rest are believed to be Americans. Number 2. Denver Airport's secret military base. Denver Airport is the largest airport in North America and the second largest in the world. But ever since it opened, it's been hounded by conspiracy theorists thanks to some of its most unusual features. One primary allegation is that underneath the airport lies a hidden secret military base. Even more, it could be hiding an alien government joint facility. Those who propose the theory aren't just pulling the ideas from out of thin air. Instead, they point to several unusual things found in and around the airport, as well as take the word of several whistleblowers who have supposedly seen what the underground area of the airport looks like. First, there's the unusual runway layout. Many say the runway arrangement is similar to that of a swastika, although airport representatives say the design is a pinwheel and was designed so all runways could be used regardless of the weather conditions. Second, at the front of the airport is a dedication stone that bears a Freemason symbol with a compass and the letter G at the center. At the bottom, the curious words, New World Airport Commission is placed, leading many to believe a small group of powerful people built the airport to become a hub for a global government. Third, there's the large Mustang statue at the front of the airport. Some say it was built to represent the fourth horseman of the apocalypse with its perpetual glowing red eyes. The statue stands 32 feet tall and looks unusual for the setting. Curiously, in 2006, it actually killed its sculptor, Luis Jimenez, when a piece of it fell on him and severed an artery in his leg. As if the horse statue wasn't enough, there are gargoyles decorating the interior of the airport to go along with the unusual murals that everyone says represents what may happen in the future. But the biggest conspiracy theory is what lies underneath the airport. Phil Schneider, a former engineer involved in creating underground military bases all across the U.S., said he was offered the position of head engineer back for an underground base underneath the Denver International Airport during the 80s. Another former construction worker said there were 5 secret buildings buried underneath the airport, and they're all linked by interconnecting tunnels. Some of these tunnels are even said to connect to other prominent areas in Denver, including its city hall. It's widely thought that the underground facility serves as a possible bunker for New World Order commanders during a catastrophe. The more extreme theories suppose it's a joint military and alien base, and that even child labor is used in some areas. There are still so many theories surrounding Denver International that sometimes it's hard to make heads or tails on which one to pursue. If you ever find yourself there, perhaps you can take a closer look and decide for yourself. Number 1. TWA 800 Conspiracies. On July 17, 1996, Trans World Airlines Flight 800 left JFK Airport in New York for a scheduled flight to Rome at 8:31 p.m. But 12 minutes after takeoff, that plane exploded and crashed into the Atlantic Ocean, killing all 230 people that were on board. Within minutes, local and civilian rescue teams scoured the crash site in hopes of finding survivors, but no one was alive. The TWA 800 was deemed the second deadliest aviation accident in the U.S. during that time. The next morning, investigators from the National Transport Safety Bureau and the FBI arrived, fearing it might have been a terrorist attack. Witnesses who saw the plane explode tell of an unusual bright, flare-like object rising before seeing a huge fireball explosion around the plane and it splitting into two. As a result, many think that the flight may have been hit by a surface-to-air missile. The FBI gathered interviews from witnesses, and out of the 736 accounts, at least 238 claimed to have seen a streak of light moving upward toward the plane. But despite this, the NTSB proclaimed they could not find any solid proof or evidence that TWA 800 was hit by a missile, and concluded that what likely happened was an air fuel explosion causing an internal fire and the breakup of the plane. But for conspiracy theorists, this explanation was unsatisfactory, and the investigation and eventual ruling pointed to a cover-up. Many allege that this plane was hit by a ship's missile. They point strongly at this for several reasons. First, there was a mysterious recorded radar track of an unknown object approaching the plane. Also, there's evidence that there was rocket fuel found on the back of the seats of the recovered plane, but the NTSB said the residue could have been remnants of a dog training explosive detection exercise done using the plane just a month before. Other possible scenarios that could have caused the crash included a possible meteor strike hitting the plane and causing the explosion. Then, there's also the possibility of electromagnetic interference that might have originated from a nearby military craft. During the flight, there were several military crafts and ships in the vicinity. Regardless of what the truth is, whether the FBI and the NTSB did conduct an extensive cover-up remains to be seen. But several outspoken individuals, including former NTSB investigator Henry Hughes and retired naval officer William S. Donaldson, believe the plane was brought down by a missile attack. So there were 5 scary and strange aviation mysteries. The ability to fly has revolutionized mankind, but just because it's a modern technology doesn't mean it's without its flaws. In fact, these are only a few of the mysterious aviation mysteries we have. There are so many more out there, and many others the public likely will never hear about. If you enjoyed watching this, then please remember to subscribe to our channel. We have 2 new videos coming out every week for you to check out. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.